right? So to your point, and I like the fact you use this phrase like 3-4 times already, is face to face, is I truly believe that the way to stand out today is to give yourself the ability, and I'm saying only focusing in on the communication side and the trust building, et cetera, is to free your people up to be able to spend 80% of their time face to face, knees to knees, toes to toes. And I actually truly mean physically with your market, because how rare is that today? To actually get to speak with someone, even not on a digital, sort of virtual thing, but actually get in front of somebody. And I think there's something really beautiful about that. There's also something really smart about that, because if you look at the companies that are winning today, they have the ability to build trust, deep trust with their market.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Ponteau. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Jonathan Collibus. He is a husband, new father, entrepreneur, and investor. He started from humble beginnings as a California farm boy and has founded 16 companies, has invested and sits on the board of more than 30. Congrats on founding 16 companies and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Well, thank you very much, Carl. It's a beautiful intro.
Thanks. Yeah. And I'm really excited to have you on the show to talk about the way companies go about implementing AI in their businesses, because we've kind of talked before about this, how the right application of these tools can lead to something like you've said, like an 18x more value. But most companies, based on that MIT article that came out a few months ago, are not seeing the value from AI. So what is your approach to how companies can get the most value from these tools?
First off, thanks for having me on, Carl. It's always good to see you.
Yeah.
I think there's a big misnomer out there, which is, we were talking a little bit about this in the green room, which is there's this idea that you can just keep on sprinkling more AI into a company and somehow magically everything's going to sort itself out. And I think what we are finding is that is very untrue, and that what most companies find is that when they start to automate things that are not working, what you get is chaos. You get chaos at scale, right? So you've got this problem of processes and systems that have never been designed to deliver as much value as humanly possible to the market. They've been designed most of the time, and I'm saying this, I think, as a founder myself, I've made this mistake, and I've seen this happen in other companies that I've invested in and companies that we consult with, is that you have a founding team, let's call it a founder, co-founder, et cetera. Your founding team, most of the time, they're the ones actually doing the delivery, right? So you've got this founder-led delivery, and then what happens is, as a company grows, hopefully, is you get this level of scale. And what that means is, well, we're hiring, and then all of a sudden we got Susie and Joe and all these new people coming in. And these new people coming in get handed, most of the time, a mandate, which is get the deliverable off the table and get it into the client's hands so I can go close more deals, so I can pay for your salary, right? That's most of the time the unspoken narrative that happens at a growth stage where a company might be very, very young. Strangely enough, I've seen this in companies where they have 250 employees, right? Where you have this, I call it a Mad Max environment, right? Where it's like everybody's driving a different vehicle. There's a lot of sort of metal playing in the background, and they're just driving in the desert in different directions. And, they're hoping that they can make something out of the cacophony. So to answer your question though, what's the correct methodology, right? So I think that's the context. The correct methodology actually is to begin with why. And I think that's maybe more of a philosophical question to kind of start this with, but I think to speak to your original point, your clients are humans, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Your team is humans, and I don't think that should change anytime soon. So you've obviously got, shareholders and stakeholders and all these other, investors and people like that who might be involved. But ultimately, when you're talking about the transaction and the value that's being given and hopefully being reciprocated on the client side, is you have a relationship first environment, as you said, right? And I think the problem that we have to get around is how do we maximize the amount of value that we can give to our marketplace, and how do we maximize the individual's ability to have that human to human. I always say it's hard, and you probably shouldn't automate communication and creativity, because communication and creativity are the two areas that are uniquely human, right? You can give it to AI, but then what happens is you get these emails that start with the first sentence, "I hope this message finds you well," and there's like 6 M dashes in the email. Everybody knows it's AI, and it feels very impersonal. So the strategy is to begin by starting with the end in mind and to reverse engineer back to square one. So you mentioned 18x as a velocity increase of value delivered. That's one of our recent clients at Superior, where we took them. Most of our clients are, getting ready to either raise capital or to go to some type of an exit, whether the founder wants to sell. And typically they're looking at their profitability. And one of the first things everybody wants to do is, well, great, how do we cut costs? Well, okay, great. It doesn't take a genius to go in and cut costs. I mean, anybody with, you don't even need a CFO. You can just go in there, okay, you're fired, okay, great. And then all of a sudden costs are down. But that's not an elegant, sustainable strategy. So our approach is to begin by identifying the entire system. And we start by looking at what is the unit of value, right? Every company will have multiple units of value that they deliver to their market, right? So the way that we do it is we look at the units of value and we say, okay, what is that definition? And then number 2 is, how do we maximize that as well? So what would it look like, to hit the baseline to where your market's not angry at you, right? Where they're getting what they paid for. And then how do you stack so much value that's relevant and that is, that has a sense of utility to it, or in some cases, entertainment value to it, that is perceived as value from your market's side. So unit of value has to be looked at first. And then number 2 is, what is the process in which we're able to deliver that? And what we find is that most companies will have a series of bottlenecks that are typically administrative in nature, wherein you have a grouping of processes that are, okay, I need to build this report, and I'm going to process all these data points. And there's all this time that gets sucked away from talking to the human on the other side, the economic buyer, the influencing buyer on the other side. And relationships are so key, because one of the big challenges that companies who are offering, especially in the service industry, face is the reoccurring nature of those relationships. Well, if you're investing 10% of your time in relationships and 90% of your time in administration, it's not rocket science.
Yeah, I think the key approach, or the key change in mindset when applying these AI tools to a business is having that priority of, how can we maximize our team's time spent with the communication and creativity and the face-to-face relationship building, and how can we get the admin or the drudgery or the data, like the really back-end heavy stuff that is a time suck and people don't really enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
How can we automate that more with AI? And then, but I think that, like you said, because that's also going to be what really adds more value to, if you're in a service-based business, that face-to-face time is often what is the real value that keeps people coming back. It's not, because obviously, like, the service they provide is probably fairly commoditized at this point, if you're, because there's not that many unique things under the sun anymore. So it's really about having that personal connection that and that community that makes people want to come back to your particular service versus the competitors, when the actual thing you're doing is probably fairly similar, but the way you're able to show up and have more of that face-to-face human-to-human connection time is going to be a real differentiator. And I think when people try and over automate things or try and like have AI take the place of the face-to-face side of things, people are already sick of phone trees before AI came around. And I don't know how many times I've kind of yelled into one of those like voice activated things, just let me talk to a person, because the option on the like press 9 for whatever isn't there. So I think does need to be that mindset shift from the leadership standpoint, which is how do we use these tools strategically to create back-end systems that free up people's time to be more on the human-to-human stuff that is going to make the biggest difference for our clients, and actually understand what your clients even want with those interactions more than you probably have already are actually asking them. I've talked with plenty of other guests of the show who've talked about how little companies actually know about what their clients want or what is actually moving the needle when it comes to influencing buying decisions. And it's just a sign of a larger disconnect between companies and their clients.
Yeah. The risk is over digitalizing what should not be digitalized, right? So to your point, and I like the fact you use this phrase like 3-4 times already, is face-to-face, is I truly believe that the way to stand out today is to give yourself the ability, and I'm saying only focusing in on the communication side and the trust building, et cetera, is to free your people up to be able to spend 80% of their time face-to-face, knees-to-knees, toes-to-toes. And I actually truly mean physically with your market, because how rare is that today? To actually get to speak with someone, even not on a digital, sort of virtual thing, but actually get in front of somebody. And I think there's something really beautiful about that. There's also something really smart about that, because if you look at the companies that are winning today, they have the ability to build trust, deep trust with their market. I think trust is built with two ways. I think one way is by making lots of micro promises that you're able to over deliver on. I think the other way is to actually to bleed, to be human, to not be this sort of fortress of code, and I think it is an interesting dichotomy, because on one hand you say, well, how do we become more profitable? Because if we're more profitable, we can pay our people more, right? So I see where that comes from. Or we can grow the company, we can afford to do better marketing, et cetera, et cetera. But I ultimately think it comes down to, you have to be able to, as a company, sit down and identify and articulate where the biggest time wasting areas in the company are. And I'd encourage, I think this is the big call to action, I think, is if you're a founder, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a leader in any company, I think it's critical to get out of the C-level office headspace and actually get into the trenches with your team. Because what you'll find, I think, a lot of times is they want to do more from a communication standpoint. In fact, it's one of the first things that we see when we free people's time up is most people, even the introverts, the engineers, people who you'd always say, oh, they don't want to talk to, they do. They want to be in front of clients. They want to build these, because why? Because we're all human. Introvert, extrovert, it doesn't matter. We all want that human connection. So I think that's one of the biggest things that we'll see is you see this migration that happens very naturally from, okay, gee whiz, I was working on this, all these Excel spreadsheets for 8 hours a day. Now I've got 6 hours of my day open. the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to email Sally. I know it's her birthday next week. There's all of this human to human relationship building that is able to happen. So, but that doesn't happen without being conscious and being able to articulate the problems. And it's not going to happen if your C-level or your founder level is in an ivory tower looking at OpEx and EBITDA nonstop. Those are important, but you can't live there.
Yeah, I love a couple things you said. And first was that, again, having the leadership down and getting face to face and in the trenches with their front level team, because that's how they actually hear and learn what's really going on with the business. Because so often by the time a report or information gets all the way up to the top of the hierarchy, it's out of date and it's often been through a few different filters, so it's not really accurate. Mm-hmm. But if they're down there talking directly with people and hearing what the frontline people are hearing from the clients or seeing in the market, then it allows them to make a much more informed and timely decisions. So just in general, kind of flattening the hierarchy in a lot of ways is important for a business to stay agile and on top of things. But then, like you said, the face-to-face time, the more, and like you said, literally face-to-face, I think it's a big point more than ever with how much how little or how easy it is for people to kind of fake content or for things to generate in a digital sense. So if you're trying to build trust with a big client or the existing client or moving to a new market, or you're trying to establish relationships and trust, if you're right across, like face to face with someone else sitting across a table or standing in an event space and there's only air between you, then they know it's you actually saying those things, and they know, and you get like the body language, you get the expression, they can feel the energy when you talk to them, and they can see you're actually listening. You're not like looking off camera, checking your email or your phone or answering a Slack message. You're actually there engaging with them. And like you said, those are those little micro promises that when over delivered on, build that trust up. And the more you can get not just the founders level or the executive level people doing that, but more of your team doing those face-to-face, in-person activities that are building those relationships, then that leads to much more trust within and outside of your business, because you're connecting with people in a way that they're craving and in a way that they can trust that they're getting a reliable message from you.
Yeah. I also believe the fastest way to grow any company is to make better offers to more people more often. Better offers to better qualified prospects more often, right? And it sounds like that's kind of trite. I think it's because it probably is. But I think one of the biggest places to get these ideas for these better offers is typically not at the C-level. It's typically at the people who are on the front lines. And if you're able to free these people up to do better work and to be more effective and to be more efficient, what I think what'll happen a lot of times is you'll find that these people will come to the table with ideas that the C-level may not even have thought of. And so I think there's this idea of, in a sense, what we want, and I'll speak for myself, what I would like is, in the companies that I start and companies that I invest in, is I prefer more of a decentralized unit, as a company, because when the company is decentralized and you're almost operating at a flat level where everyone has a voice there, it's more of a meritocracy in a sense. What happens is you get so much more creativity, because instead of having one person with 700 tabs open in their head going, I got to solve all these problems, you're able to come together as a team and solve unique problems as a team. But again, I think the currency for that is time, right? And that's the currency that we need to be able to free up for everybody on the team.
Yeah, I think overall that model you just described is a much better model for working in the current market with how like quickly things change and how much you do need multiple contributors of ideas from diverse backgrounds to find something that's really going to be innovative and creative, and using the right tools to unlock time that allows people to spend their brain power on that, not on the 35th Excel spreadsheet they had to go through. But from a lot of organizations, that's going to take a number of paradigm shifts, and it takes a lot of work, but it's definitely work worth doing, because the alternative is either a crashing collapse or a slow grind into obscurity because you're not able to keep up anymore. So thank you so much for connecting with me today, Jonathan. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection podcast, please like, leave a review, and share it. If you want to connect with myself or Jonathan, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.